hereby given that the City Council of the City of Alpine, Texas will hold a regular meeting at 5:30 p.m. on Tuesday, April 2nd, 2019, in the council chambers at 803 West Holland in the City of Alpine, Texas, for the purpose of considering the attached agenda. The notice is posted pursuant to the Texas Open Meeting Act, Section 551.043, Texas Government Code. Public notice: the use of cellular phones are prohibited in the City Council chambers during meeting of the City Council. Members of the audience will be provided an opportunity to address the council during public hearings and during action items. Please speak into the microphone located at the podium. State your name and address. If you have a petition or other information pertaining to your subject, please present it to the City Secretary. State law generally prohibits the council from discussing or taking any action on any issue not included on the agenda. But if appropriate, the council may schedule a topic for future discussion or refer the matter to staff. No personal attacks on council members or city staff will be allowed. The mayor may call a point of order to stop the personal attacks. An individual continues to personally attack elected official or staff member in a meeting, they may be barred. I call this meeting to order. We'll have the invocation. Reverend Manna, please.
Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this good day. It is a gift from you, and I pray that we have all used it as such. I pray, Heavenly Father, that we have remembered that you have called us to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with our God. We thank you for this beautiful city in which we are able to live our lives. We are especially thankful for these representatives who have come together to make our ordinances and our laws and set rules, dear Lord, and to deliberate and to solve problems. Dear Heavenly Father, please be with them as they do this. Dear Lord, we thank you for the citizens who have come tonight. Dear Heavenly Father, whatever they're coming for, we pray that we would understand. Dear Heavenly Father, we pray that we would be able to both agree and disagree with one another and still call one another friends and members of the Alpine community. Please be with us through this meeting. May your will be done in all our lives, for I ask it in the name of Jesus Christ.
Pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you all very much. Okay, City Secretary, do we have a quorum?
Mayor, we do have a quorum, and we have an excused absence from Councilor Fitzgerald, and the notice was posted at 10 a.m. on March 29th, 2019.
Okay. And today we have some recognitions. We have quite a few birthdays. And and I wish everybody that's on this list a happy birthday. And they are as follows: Valerie Catani, Dominique Rubio, Michael Macias, Adrian Fierro, Akeem Jackson, Eddie Molinar, Delina Beal, and Antonio Ibarra, and Giovanni Gonzalez. And also have a proclamation for this month. It's Safe Digging Month. And whereas thousands of times each year, the underground infrastructure in Texas is damaged by those who do not have underground lines located prior to digging, resulting in service interruptions, environmental damage, and threats to public safety. And whereas in 2005, the Federal Communications Commission designated 811 to provide excavators and homeowners a simple number to contact utility operators to request the location of underground lines or intended digging sites. And whereas the Damage Prevention Council of Texas, a stakeholder-driven organization dedicated to the prevention of damage to underground facilities in all 254 counties, promote the national 811 notification system in effort to reduce these damages. And whereas damage prevention is a shared and responsibility by using safe digging practice, persons living and working in the city of Alpine and Brewster County can save time and money and help keep our infrastructure safe and connected. Now therefore, I, Andres Ramos, Mayor of the City of Alpine, Texas, do hereby proclaim on behalf of the City of Alpine the Damage Prevention Council of Texas to monitor April 2019 as Alpine Safe Digging Month, and encourage excavators and homeowners throughout the city and Brewster County to always call 811 before digging. Safe digging is no accident. In the witness whereof, I do hereby set my hand and cause the seal of the City of Alpine to be affixed on this, the second day of April 2019. Andres Ramos, Mayor of the City of Alpine. And we have experienced a lot of issues with damage.
Mayor,
Yes.
Randy Guzman is here to receive.
Oh, okay, we'll give it to him then? Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, Randy, you want to come up then? Sure. And Randy works a lot with the gas department, he's in charge of it, so he ought to know about cable locates, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right, appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we've had some cut telephone lines this year, some lasting outages up to 24 hours. So that was because of lack of cable locates. So moving forward, I strongly urge, you see anybody digging in or around where there's telephone lines, gas lines, water lines, or electric, please call 811, okay? Thank you all very much. And we'll move on. I don't have a report. City manager?
I do not have a report in light of the length of this agenda.
Okay, public hearings. Public hearing to obtain citizens' views and comments concerning ordinance 2019.03.01, an ordinance of the City of Alpine, Texas, amending Chapter 94, Traffic and Vehicles of the Code of Ordinance, City of Alpine, Texas, to require a fee for requested police escort service, providing that this ordinance shall be cumulative, providing a severity clause, providing the penalty clause, providing for publication in the official newspaper, and providing an effective date. And B, public hearing to obtain ordinance 2019-04-01, an ordinance of the City of Alpine, Texas, amending Chapter 18, Building and Building Regulations of the Code of Ordinances, City of Alpine, Texas, by adding the new Article 10, Contractor Registration, to provide for the registration of contractors and setting fees for the registration of contractors, providing that this ordinance shall be cumulative, providing a severability clause, providing a penalty clause, providing for publication in the official newspaper, and providing an effective date. And we'll move to item 6.
Public hearing.
Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there any questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I didn't see you in the back. I'm sorry.
I'm Lance Jarrett. I'm with Jarrett Dorg and Paving. I'm from Fort Davis, but we have a yard over here in Alpine, and I do a lot of business here in Alpine. So my first question is on this first one about the escort. Does that include oversized overweight loads that have got to go through town? And the city wants us to have an escort. So how are we going to get a bill to do that? Or are we, I mean, because most of the time we can't call ahead to have somebody meet us. We have to wait till we get to the edge of town, then call, sit there and wait until somebody shows up, and then go through town. So I'm just wondering if y'all are gonna require a fee, how is that gonna work? I mean, how am I gonna send my guys with some money, or have we thought about that part of it yet?
Yes, APD will fill out the bill and then send. No comments, I'm sorry.
We're
Yes.
to get comments. We'll
Yeah.
talk about it on the action items.
Okay, so that's my biggest question is, and I mean, and how much is this fee gonna be? I mean, It's already hard enough as it is to get through town waiting. I mean, because sometimes we wait anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half for the escort because, I mean, there's not enough cops to go around as it is. So they've got to pull off to do whatever they're doing. So, I mean, it's a difficult situation to begin with, and this is the only town in this area that requires us to do this. We blow through Fort Davis, Marfa, Fort Stockton, Pecos. You just, I mean, you have the permit, so it's gonna make it even more of a pain to come through town if we're gonna be starting to add fees on top of everything else. So that's my first comment on that part. Then on this B, I mean, I'm not really sure what you're meaning, wanting to register with the city. As far as, I mean, are we talking about those of us that are contractors? If we intend on doing business within the city limits, are y'all gonna require us to register with the city in order to be able to do business within the city or for the city? And if you start making us register and start putting fees on us in order to do business here, I mean, you're just, to me, you're punishing the people who live here. It's already, I called several contractors this morning to talk about this, and we're all under the same mindset as of late. Most of us avoid working within the city limits already because it is so difficult to work with the city services. So if we can avoid it, we do. But if we do work within the city, it costs way more than if I go out here to Sunny Glen or I go over here to Sarah Lorana to Double Diamond. It used to be more expensive for somebody to do work out there than it was here. Now it costs you more money if you live in the city because of all of the stuff that we have to go through to do it. It's getting extremely difficult to be a contractor in this town. And we're starting to go down a slippery slope here because every time I turn around and I look in the paper, there's another ordinance hammering us. We want you to expect you to do this. And I don't understand it. I didn't realize that all of us were so bad that everybody has to watch over us like this. So that's my comments there when y'all discuss this and think about this. Who is this really benefiting? I mean, and what is really the purpose in this? Because I mean, I'm not seeing it myself. It's just costing the people that we should be trying to help out more because we just keep adding more big city stuff to our little town. And I don't live in a big city, and this is the reason why I don't, because I don't want to have to do this kind of stuff. So that's my comments on that. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Galen Mack, Ward 2. I'm a journeyman plumber. I am licensed by the state. I pay a fee to the state every year. And I'm a little confused as to why, or the exact wording. Frankly, if my wife is cleaning an Airbnb, she's contracting. Frankly, is the city council going to register as a contractor? I mean, y'all are following rules and y'all are receiving remittance for your time. So, on top of that, we do business over a handshake in this town. There aren't contracts exchanging hands. I just don't understand why this city would need to register folks, except to put them on a list of approved contractors. Fortunately, the business I work with, does not need any advertisement and wants to respect its privacy. If that becomes an issue, don't put the name on the list. And honestly, it's just going to get passed on to the citizens. I mean, and it's just going to keep. It's already expensive enough as it is to bring in material out here and to build anything out here. You might as well be building on the moon in some cases. So, you know, this is just another spiraling cost of building out here. So I really just don't see the point in registering some people and not others. Now, if you want every person that stacks groceries at the grocery store to register as a contractor, great. All right, let's put it all on a level playing field, make it cost more to work. That's the way the direction this town's going, you know? I don't see it lasting that long. Thank you for your time.
Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to the consent agenda. Minutes, financial reports, department written reports, board appointments, etc. Notice is given to the public. The following items are of routine and administrative nature. The council has been furnished with background support material on each item and/or it has been discussed at a previous meeting. All items will be acted upon by one vote without being discussed separately unless requested by city council member, in which the event the item or items will be immediately withdrawn for an individual consideration in its normal sequence after the items not requiring separate discussion has been acted upon. The remaining items will be adopted by one vote. City manager.
Mayor, item A is approved minutes of the city council meeting on March 19th, 2019. Item B is approval of resolution 2019-0404, documenting the intent by council on the March 19th, 2019 meeting to rename the ball field at Centennial Park for Mr. Val LePont. And item C is approval of resolution 2019-0403. The city of Alpine will support and work with the Leisure and Outdoor Recreation Program in the Department of Kinesiology and Human Resources at Sullivan State University in developing park relation and service learning projects.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve the consent agenda as written.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Honorable Mayor, requesting that item number 7, executive session, I move that we move the executive session to the end of the meeting for today's agenda.
A second.
Okay, motion's been made and second. Any discussion? Yes, sir.
So the only discussion is Ron Hollifield asked that we do it early, and that's the reason it got moved up early, is at his request, because he's used an extended amount of time that we council would need to address it. We wanted to make sure we had sufficient time and weren't at the tail end of our meeting, so that's why it was moved up. And it was reviewed by the committee in that process.
Right. Okay. Any more discussion?
My only response to that would be that when we look at back at the previous meeting agendas, it is true that we spent quite a bit of time and up to 2 hours at some point on executive sessions. But at this time, I just can't see why we should go into it when we have an extensive items on the agenda still to discuss, and having our residents having to sit for maybe an extensive executive session, and then having to wait out there, and then having to come back in to continue with their meeting, when they might be interested in what the rest of the meeting's about.
Okay. Any more discussions? Yes, sir.
So the only thing I would suggest then is we agree now that if we're going to go past 9 o'clock, that resolution is passed as part of this, so we automatically get to the full agenda.
Okay.
Yes.
Any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor, raise your right hand.
Just making sure we're going to move item 7 to later when we normally
Back
have the
when we
agenda.
normally have it, correct.
And at the same time, we are passing a resolution now that the meeting will extend past 9 p.m. this evening to the time it takes to complete the full agenda.
Okay. So, all those in favor of moving it back to order to regular? Okay, everybody? Those opposed? None? It moves back to the regular position in the agenda. Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to city council reserves the right to, not that, I'm sorry. Number 9. Information or discussion items. Provide an update. That's yours, Mr. C.
Yeah,
Councilman Stevens.
so this is all provide an update on the Brewster County Assessment District Board, including potential changes to the fiscal year from the board with no planned financial impact to the taxing entities. There were a couple items in your package. One was a letter from Denise Flores, which talks about the potential for changing the Brewster County Assessment District fiscal year just to, instead of starting on the 1st of October, to start on the 1st of January and be more in line with the calendar year. We've had extensive discussion about this at the board, and the rationale behind it is all of the state tax laws tie to a calendar year as opposed to a typical government fiscal year. We asked that as part of this, we send a letter out to all the 7 entities that the Brewster County Appraisal District Board supports. One is to provide notice, and that's what the letter from Denise Flores is. And as part of that, we included what a budget would look like, because if you go from, somewhere you got to go from 12 months to a 15-month fiscal year. When we look at where we are financially within the appraisal district, we actually have sufficient funds that we can cover 15 months of appraisal district work and not have to go back to the taxing entities for any more money other than a normal 12-month schedule. So I wanted to bring that up here. Essentially what that means is we would continue on and change to the calendar year, and essentially what that would allow us to do is set a budget come 1 October for a 15-month period, but we would only come back to the entities for 12 months worth of funding. So that's the game plan and strategy. So if we think about what Alpine currently pays, Alpine would pay no more than it would for 15 months as it would for 12 months, and we get back in cycle and we fall back in. So that was one item. Does that make sense? Okay. So second item, we've gone through and looked at our bylaws, and we have a couple members. You see a letter in here from our board secretary, from Mary McAllister. It indicates that Mr. Sanders resigned from the board. His term would have expired at the end of this year. We have, in addition to Ron passing, we have 2 other board members who, when we look at our bylaws, aren't allowed to be on board. And so we are going to be looking at members to replace them. We have an obligation, according to our bylaws, to notify all of the members who are part of the taxing entity and let them know when a vacancy exists. So that's what this letter is. The city will get another letter relative to the other 2 positions. I would also tell you that there was a resolution passed in the 1990s that essentially said every one of the 7 districts that are represented will appoint their own individual to work that. Nonetheless, we as a board still have to approve that. So we're fulfilling our statutory obligation to notify all of the entities that there will be a change in the members. We'll get one more letter. We'll bring this up in the most likely the May-June meeting to finalize that. We'll make a decision to press forward, but as part of my role to represent the city on the assessment district board, I want to make sure the council is all up to speed on that. That's all I have.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. Your manager.
Well, item B is also mine,
Oh,
sir.
but yours also,
So
okay?
item B is a follow-up, and we had a discussion at the last city council meeting about roads and the challenges there, so I pulled a page out of our budget that we approved this last year, which includes performance measures and expenditures. We had allocated $1.16 million to the streets department, which includes labor, maintenance, material, as well as capital improvements streets, which tends to be contracted out. And I thought it worthwhile to have a discussion, get some feedback about where are we relative to those performance measures, given that we're supposed to resurface 36 blocks, 250 potholes repaired by the ton, replace 200 signs, 120 work orders, get those completed, repair vehicles and maintain 30 miles of drainage, and then do training hours. So I thought it worthwhile to put this on the table. And so I don't know if the city manager has any updates for that information, but wanted to get it out because I get lots of questions. Where are we on street maintenance?
Okay.
Going to the performance measures, the first performance measure was streets resurfaced blocks. We have not resurfaced any blocks. We have milled and addressed some serious issues on 22.6 blocks. They have been milled and then base added to them. They're ready for paving for the most part, if we get to that point. Potholes repaired by ton. The street department has utilized or has ordered 220.95 tons of material to replace potholes. The benchmark there was 250. I don't have a number on the number of street signs replaced, but I do know there was some extensive street sign replacing that was going on in November and December. Work orders placed to date is 71. Work orders completed is 50. Vehicles repaired and maintained, there are still 12 vehicles that our mechanic is still working on. We didn't have a number last year for right-of-way acres maintained, and Eddie was in the process of getting that together. Out of drainage maintained was 30 miles, and they have already started doing that maintenance, but he didn't have an accurate number for me as to how many miles have been done at this point. Training hours was set for 360 for 40 hours per employee, and according to what we were showing, the employees have received somewhere about 15 hours. Some of them only have 10. And so we're still working on getting them trained. There's some mandatory trainings that we're doing citywide at the request of TML. And then other trainings that are coming in. We did send 2 employees to go get training for the pool. One of them did get his certification and will be presenting him at the next council meeting. And the other one will be retaking the test. So the training is ongoing. As for where we're at right now, street maintenance material, we're at 46%. We've used 46% of our budget, and out of the capital improvement line, we've used 9%. So there is a substantial amount of money still sitting there. We've had some conversations about doing the street study. It was originally budgeted at $20,000, came in at 43. There was one that came in less, but they weren't going to be able to get to it until end of June, maybe July, which of course is too late. The street study's been presented twice to council and did not pass at either one of those meetings. Again, going off of what Hector left for us from last year. We have it in here. It actually totaled 1.68 miles, which still would leave us short of that 36 benchmark. The issue right now is that our street department is relatively new. For many years, Hector and his brother Jose Luis assisted with Eddie in operating the equipment. Both of them have retired, and there is not sufficient capacity or knowledge within the department to operate that machinery. Because of where these streets kind of lie, they're a little scattered, and so to contract them out is going to be a little bit more expensive than if we just pick an area. The intent with the street study was to have the consultant go through, evaluate the streets, prioritize them, and then be able to address them in sections to keep costs down, as well as mobilization costs and things like that that go with it. The other issue is that we don't have an engineer on staff to design this. I did send a letter or a request out to TML, their legal department. They responded that as a city, you are required to have an engineer design the project and oversee the project. I know that I've shared that information with many of you from the state statutes, as well as the procurement manual that the state puts out. And so that's kind of where we're at with the streets. Eddie and his crew continue to work on potholes. We have talked about perhaps bringing Hector and his brother back on contract. Neither one of them has confirmed with us that they are willing to come back to do a paving season. Eddie has ordered material as well as some additional adhesive in preparation, but it's all going to depend on whether they come back or not to do it. Just to kind of give you an idea of the funds, if you do a street study, and I rounded it up to 50,000, even though the proposal was for 43, you've got approximately 2,550 households in Alpine. So the cost for a street study is minimal per household on that over the past couple of months. And you'll hear in the audit that we've pulled funds from the gas department and the street and general fund to complete the project at the airport of $216,560. At the last meeting, they're expected to need another $247,000 in the next few years to include a master plan for the airport. There are approximately 35 to 40 hangars, so at 40 hangars, that cost is for a master plan at $70,000 is $1,750. So to me, I think it makes sense to go ahead and spend that money to do the street study that will give the city a plan for the next 5 to 10 years in addressing its streets and improvements. It can then be tied into the line replacement program for the water and the sewer and the gas department to relocate that infrastructure and replace old lines. Week before last, we had a sewer line collapse out on the loop, and we had to contract someone to come in to take care of that, to get it addressed right away. And there are a number of areas within the city that are still working off of clay pipes, pipes that have never been replaced since the city first implemented its water and sewer. And so it's really up to the council as far as how they want to proceed with this. If we contract it out, we can potentially put out an RFQ for an engineer. But if we get that study done, at least it lays out a plan for us for the next 5 to 10 years. It also allows an opportunity for the public to come in and engage in that process and kind of put in their 2 cents as to what their needs are on those streets. So that's where we're at with the benchmarks, and that's kind of where we're at with the rest of it.
So thanks for that update. Regardless of whether we do a street study or not, what I think I heard is we have to have an engineer. Why are we waiting to go find an engineer? Why did we wait until now to go think about that?
And how much would it cost us to get in?
Generally, an engineer is going to run you 10% of your project cost. So if we're going to do $300,000, the engineer will probably charge you about $30,000 to do all of that. And that usually includes the project management. It's not just the design, but it's the project management, the quality control on it. I think the reason that I've not brought forward the RFQ to bring an engineer to do that is because the original plan was to do the street study. We had some requests to put in some sidewalks. We had some requests to put in some crosswalks. In discussions with Chris Weber, I think he said, yeah, you definitely need to make sure you have a study done before you put those in. Crosswalks and signage tend to give people a false sense of security. And we just recently had that discussion as part of the Corridor 67 planning meetings as well. And I think if council wants to go ahead and provide direction to go ahead and bring in an engineer, we can do that. But I think the street study is still something that you need to lay out a capital improvement plan for the next 5 to 10 years of the city.
But if we got 22.6 blocks that are milled, what I think I heard is we have to have an engineer on staff before we can go even put down asphalt on those.
Yes, because they need to make sure with the slope and the quantity and make sure there's appropriate base laid and things like that.
So there certainly is a study, which is the longer term, but in the near term, we got 22.6 blocks that are sitting there with no capability to go do an independent study.
They could, yeah.
So,
19.6 of those blocks are country club estates. That would make them very happy.
so I would suggest you come back to council with a plan, that's what we're looking
With the plan or with an RFQ?
for. Let's talk about plan and strategy. You talked about, and we allocated money, $250,000 ballpark, to go do the study on our water and sewers, which is all about wanting to do the underground before we do the above ground. We still have not seen or understand what that begins to look like before we start tearing up streets. And so here we are, kind of a year and a half after we had that discussion, so it would be nice to kind of get a broader picture of what's the time schedule for all that.
Do that.
And then street signs, you said a number of street signs have been replaced. Where have those been? And what street signs are we talking about?
They replaced some stop and yield signs, readjusted some poles. They worked on, I don't have the number, I didn't get the number back from Eddie on how many signs they were doing, but they were also working on other signage. We also met with Chris Weber and Chris Ruggia to talk about the Wayfair signs, and so we did kind of set aside a little bit of this money in case we needed to cover some signs on our own. And Chris will probably get back with us within the next 2 weeks or so on what signs they can pay for and what signs the city does.
Jessica, you mentioned the repaving season. Have you any idea in mind, what do you actually mean by that?
Well, you can generally repave as long as you don't have temperatures drop below 40 degrees consistently. And so I guess depending on what weather pattern you look at, your paving season could run as late as October or could end as early, or I should say that the other way around. Could end as early as October or could go as late as November.
Yeah, with the idea, just keeping in mind the rainy season for this area. 'Cause I'm not sure if I do recall correctly, the last go around on repaving, we laid out some streets and they looked nice, but then we got into the rainy season and, you know, down went all the asphalt. So I guess keeping in mind the rainy season, temperature, all the other, is something to consider.
And weather was something that we were fortunate, I think, with the airport project, that we didn't have too many days down with weather. I think if that project had been pushed back 3 months, it might have been a little different. But
For the, I think it's the FRP? This year, we requested or assumed 20,000 for the resetting the study on a pavement plan. But we found out that according to the return results, we needed actually close to 50,000, which means that this next go around, when we get into the budget setting, we find it maybe favorable that we should reconsider, but at a higher level of funding.
I think it all depends on the complexity of what you're asking for. The needs assessment for the water and the sewer system, we put a cap on it at 150,000 with various items. There's going to be some readjustment on that scope because we were able to get some free technical assistance to address some of those issues from TCEQ. They'll actually be here in 2 weeks, so they're going to start addressing some of the minor issues, which will leave us a little bit more room to do some of the more complex stuff within that needs assessment. When you do a request for qualifications for professional services, you can put a cap on it in your budget, but you still have to negotiate with whoever you choose. the consultant study that we did for the streets basically said, this is the scope that I need, give me a price. If they had come in over 50,000, then we would have had to procure their work a different way, simply because of Chapter 252 on procurement. So anything over 50,000 would have had to be done differently. So I think it just depends on how technical and how comprehensive we want those studies to be. In this case, we kind of just did this part. Generally, when you do a full transportation study, there are 7 elements to it, which is the initial evaluation and identification of the streets, the mapping, what they call cross-section designs, actual traffic counts, and things like that. That's not going to be in this study. This is just basically a survey and identification of the streets and their current conditions, to give us an idea of, within priority, how we move forward over the next few years. With the cost estimate, with a measurable amount of inflation added each year, so that we know also what we need to budget to accomplish that year's streets. Does it mean that you'll always be able to hit it? Probably not. There are always unforeseen circumstances when you're doing any kind of public works project. It could be a line that nobody knew was there, and it could be right-of-way issues. It could be survey issues. So sometimes those things end up impacting that price, and so what you get done in the end ends up being less than what you anticipated.
Considering all the things we have discussed, it seems that we're going to be doing some repaving sometime in the near future.
I'm really hoping that that we're able to bring Hector and his brother back on a contract basis. And if we are, then on the next agenda, we'll ask to have council's approval to bring them in on a contract, because their expenses will come out of that same line item.
And now the 2 other items, a study for streets and hiring an engineer. I'm sure you want to go for both, but who do you think would be the priority? What would be the priority?
Well, you're going to have to do one either way. As long as the project exceeds $20,000, you have to bring in an engineer.
An engineer is important.
And that's set by TML, correct?
That's set by state law.
State law.
That's set by state law. And there are a number of ways you can do it. I mean, we could always do an RFQ for an on-call engineer and have him work the projects as we get through them, instead of doing kind of a bulk type of RFQ. And that way he's addressing each project separately or each section separately, as opposed to the whole thing at one time. If he designs a cross-section on one and says this applies to these 5 streets, then you don't have to design all 5 streets. Or you do the whole, yes, design all these streets. That's going to increase the price. But it depends on the survey, because again, the survey may come back and say, yeah, you just need to do an overlay here, a seal coat, and that wouldn't require a full engineering design on it. Because you're not working the base.
So without the study, and we start taking streets, would we shorten the lifespan of the street?
Well, without the study, you're not going to shorten the lifespan of the streets. What's going to shorten the lifespan of the streets is having to go in and replace the infrastructure underneath the street first. That's what's going to affect that. And if it's not sloped the right way or sloped enough and it's carrying water, it's going to deteriorate the edge of your road.
Any more? Okay. City manager, then it's yours.
This is the update on the sale of delinquent properties, and I would like to introduce Lori and Danny Danny and Lori. Lori's like, no, just kidding.
Ready?
Yeah, we're ready.
Mayor, Council, glad to be here. Jessica, thanks for asking us. This is Lori Wilmarth, our right-hand person here in Alpine, the Big Bend area. She's been a great help. Back in May of 18, I switched over to the law firm of Purdue Brandon Fielder Collins, Vermont, for delinquent tax work. We're in contract, we really get started in June, and if you're familiar with delinquent taxes, June is the end of the delinquent tax year. July 1st is the beginning of it, so we really got going July the 1st. So we've kind of been at it 10 months, so to speak, as I'm standing here before you. The report I brought to you is kind of from our Texas Communities Group work. Texas Communities Group is a kind of subsidiary company that runs alongside with Purdue and does some things in addition to just straight normal delinquent tax collection. We try to find some money that you might not have been able to access before. So I'm going to kind of go through that. I'm going to kind of start backwards. First, I'm going to start with our trust property sales. Trust properties are properties that have previously been to foreclosure. Nobody paid the minimum bid at the time, and so it's struck off, and so you own it in conjunction with the other tax entities, school, county, hospital, and
So
city.
we have no data, so I don't know what you're going to show us, that's fine.
Okay,
We have nothing
okay.
written down on it.
Okay.
It didn't get in time for the
Okay.
packet.
We were working on this yesterday, so that's my apologies. There's a couple. I've got one, I've got notes written on all over. So anyway, those trust properties, y'all had one trust property within the city limits. We used our marketing and we were selling some other properties in the school districts that were not in the city as well. But the one property we had, we got sold for $12,500. So we brought in $12,500 on that, got it back on the tax roll into the new owner's hands, and somebody's taking care of that. It's previously an exempt property, we weren't receiving anything. The other thing we do is we work with the city staff on identifying some vacant and abandoned properties. Then we execute tax warrants through the law firm on that. We work to identify, get an affidavit of vacancy. And what that does, it kind of kicks some of those properties that where people have walked away from it, maybe passed away, left the country, or died without probate, and folks are scattered, but nobody's using the property. We executed a tax warrant here. We started with 19 properties in it. The first one that we did, 5 of those parcels we identified people who got in contact with those people and got them paid before we actually went to sale. That collected about $11,542 worth of taxes, so you get a portion of that. We had one property that was struck off. You own it in trust now. We're kind of working with Jessica and her staff on a...
We'll tell that story at the end.
Yeah, that's a good story to end on. With a plan on that piece of property as to what we can do with it. We think we've got a lot of options there. And then we had 13 of those properties sell at the tax sale, generating $68,000 worth of purchase money at the sale that you get to share with the other entities. So we're very happy with that. All told, when you look for just the city, there was about $98,000 worth of tax payments and sales that we generated. If you look at just kind of based off tax rates, your portion of that is going to be about $27,500 in about 10 months. And so that's in addition to the delinquent tax work that's going on, so we're very happy with that. We think we're off to a really good start. One thing I do want to add, which is a great thing, we hope we can find these type things, thank the services that Purdue provides, and with some of the things we do with TCG, we can find some extra money for you. In that sale, it was such a good sale, we do some extra things as far as getting the word out. We had excess proceeds in that sale of $6,300. We've worked with your city attorney, passed that information on to him. One of those properties we sold, y'all had a demolition lien recorded for about $10,000 or so. And so we drew up the instruments and they're taking care of it with the court.
but you should be able to get all of that $6,300 to the city to compensate for that lien that was recorded. So if you've been in the business a long time like me, you don't see that happen very often, so we're very happy to see that.
So why wouldn't you check for liens prior to sale?
Oh, we knew we had a lien. We knew we had a
So
lien.
you had a lien, so why wouldn't you therefore set a minimum so the city would get all its money back on the lien?
It was a property tax seizure, so we could sell it for the property tax.
So how do we fix that? Because potentially the city would find itself in a situation for having torn a building down for safety requirements and never get any money back.
A lot of times in city lanes, sometimes you just don't. And depends on how the property's sold. Really, sometimes the only time you see some money is when it actually goes through a property tax foreclosure and when you have excess proceeds. So it's kind of a great thing to happen. And quite honestly, we've seen a lot of cities kind of do away with the liens. Just because sometimes, depending on how that property changes hands, they keep the taxes paid. Sometimes it doesn't go to a normal closing where they go in and take care of those. So we're very excited to get that money to you. Probably not all of it, obviously, but it is some of it. So we're very, very happy with that. Other than that, like she said, I don't know if you want to bring up that property or not, but.
Want to tell the story? The one property that that did not sell, that we currently have the sign for sale on. And while Lori was doing research and Victor and Scott were doing some research, discovered that that property sits on top of an old cemetery. And there are still bodies buried within the property. So this is between First and, I can't remember the street, to the east of that. And community center sits. Right, where the community center sits. And one of the neighbors says, oh yeah, when it rains here, you can see where the coffins are at. We're like, oh, okay. I reached out to Sel Ross with their archives, and she sent me kind of a one-page little write-up. Not sure where it came out of. And apparently, according to the story, there were some cowboys that were out, and one of them said, when I die, I want you to bury me on that hill. And so they buried him, and then someone said, hey, look, there's a grave, let's bury the next person, and let's bury the next person. And it became known as Boot Hill. And sometime later on, when the city was installing, I can't remember if it was water lines or gas lines, they disturbed some of those graves, and so they put all of I guess they contacted the Texas Historical Commission. They came out, they put all of those remains in one box, and they were reinterred at the present-day cemetery. But there are still bodies buried under those houses, and I want to say maybe altogether there's about 45 houses in that area on top of that old cemetery. This particular property has a mausoleum that sits half in its property, half in the property behind it. Yes. And they fashioned the fence to go over the mausoleum.
Yeah.
So we are trying to figure out, aside from just disclosing what's on there, how we proceed with selling the property. I think, Lori, you said somebody had already called wanting to purchase it?
Two of the neighbors said that they have interest in placing a bid.
Hadn't had that call. But really, we're ecstatic with the start of it. I think, we're also using our marketing tools on the Alpine School property. We call it Texas Communities because that just help the cities. But I think overall, with the properties we sold that were in trust there for the school district, including what we did with the city, we're looking at about $121,000 generated from this work. So, good start. Yes, sir.
Danny, a couple questions on the seizures. It says 19 up top, 5 plus 1 plus 13 is the 19. Is that what you're talking about? The 19?
Yes, we had 13 that were sold, and then the one struck off, so 14 and 5 parcels that were actually pulled from the sale due to tax payment. So that.
And these numbers, are they reflected with the total collections of which Alpine gets out of 225?
About approximately 23% basically comes to the city.
Okay. And remind me what the business arrangement is with you all, how do you all get paid?
We are working here through, we wanted to come in and do work for a year and kind of show you what the services do. And we can negotiate it here in July.
No, so, but how do you get paid? I mean, is your cost greater than what you're making here? So we pay you on a percentage basis of what you recover, how's that work?
We base it kind of on the population and the number of trust properties that you have when we start. So what we would have charged probably would have been around $3,000 a year. So it's just an added service, kind of an extension a little bit, kind of dubbed it foreclosure, beyond foreclosure, what are you going to do after that? So what we tried to do is price it in a way that hopefully we generate more money than the cost that we have.
And is it a fixed fee or percentage?
Fixed fee.
It is a fixed fee?
Yeah. We don't make any money off the sales, no commission or any percentage.
Thank you.
Thank you all, we appreciate it. It's been great working with Jessica and the staff, and like I said, we're pretty excited with the 10 months. We're happy with those results. So, thank you all.
Okay, thank you. And this was yours, sir.
Hey. I'd like to bring up the following discussion and that's for consideration of council, is the need to conduct a citywide study to assess if residents within the established municipal boundary have access to city services such as water, sewer, and accessible roads up to their property. And I'd like if I can make the equipment work.
I think it fell asleep.
It turned off.
It turned off.
I'd like to, first of all, start off with by saying that a couple of meetings back, we had a very interesting discussion. In fact, the gentleman, Galen Mack, is here, who brought up a very interesting topic about the possibility of seeing if we could have an extension of the sewer line services from where they exist now on towards his property, where he can tap in. And the information that was brought out was most interesting because he also happened to mention that along the area where he lives, there are other properties that are also found there, and there's a possibility that they may also be interested in tapping into a sewer line if available. The interesting thing is that his property apparently, and there is a little bit of confusion here, that whether it's within the boundary of the city and when it was an annex. And I think Galen and Councilman Stevens are going to be working on that to try to assess the actual status of his property. But to begin with, I'd like to just put up here a map of the wards within the city. And of course, I represent Ward 2, which is a rather interesting shaped ward. But it basically starts off around 7th Street and then all the way down to this area and then back up towards Brown Street and then back to 7th across the tracks. If I can hit the right one here. Oops. Apparently it's not gonna work. Let me go back into maps. Okay, here's a city map of our beautiful city, Alpine. And the area that I'd like to expand on is, can you get into it?
You gotta get closer. Just can't see the lines because of the lighting.
Yeah. Okay, I'll start right here. Mosley Lane Loop is in the area that Galen Mack lives in, as well as other residents. And interesting enough, within that area, the sewer line, the city sewer line right now ends up right about here. His home is here, but there are quite a few other homes in between that could benefit from an extension of that sewer line to his property within the city of Alpine. But again, there is a question of whether his property was annexed into the city, and it brings up another interesting point that I'd like to make, is that we might want to do an extensive study, or the city take an extensive study of all the properties that have been accessed within the city boundary of Alpine, and find out where they're located on one single map. I think would be most beneficial for us to make assessments as to what the needs are for residents within those annexed regions. And when one looks at Mosley Lane, there's quite a few homes out there, and I have no idea within Ward 2 where some of the residents that are found here, whether they have access to sewer, to water, or whether the roads are paved up to for the boundary that leads into the property. So it might be, the idea would be good in this discussion to see if we might start focusing on a study to find out where the annexation's limits are, and try to get one big map that will help us to plan for the future in the city.
If I may.
Yeah.
We actually started that. We had somebody starting to put the maps together with the annexations. And so we have the city limits, and then there are blank spaces where we have not been able to locate the actual annexation documents, and Mr. Max is one of those, but I think there's maybe still like 8 or 9? There are like 9? 9 annexations that we have not been able to find parcels for.
Okay.
So we've started working on that for that purpose, to identify when the annexations took place so that we know what our obligations are as the city to those areas are. But I think Gio spends more time at the courthouse looking at stuff than here. But he's been looking for Mr. Mack since we first talked 9 months ago, 10 months ago?
Sure, I've been working on it for a lot longer than that.
Yeah.
But until I found the original incorporation documents.
Yeah, we can't. Yeah. So that map is already in progress, and so as Gio finds annexations, he's sending them off to the person who's doing the mapping for us so they can color it in and then get it tagged, right?
Yeah, because in the code of ordinances, you have your annexations by year, and it gives a nice description, but it takes a surveyor to understand.
Well, and that's what he does, is he goes off of those survey points to identify where they're at. But yeah, there's about 10 blanks still on that map where we're still looking for annexations.
So the map apparently is in progress.
Yes, it is.
Actually, discussion and information is primarily amongst council.
And I had a question. I was talking to Mr. Skinner a while back, and he said that Mosley Loop was part of their property, and they had kind of given the city and the county use of it.
So according to the maps that we have from the other annexations adjacent to Mr. Max, is that the city annexed the properties but did not annex the roadways. And so the roadway is technically a county road. So to run the extension, we have to get permission from the county to be able to utilize their road and their right-of-way to run those lines out there. And then, of course, repave the road up to their expectations wherever we to go. But yes, I think if the other, and this was something that we had talked about before, if it was possible for Mr. Mack to reach out to his neighbors and then they could share the cost of running that sewer line up there, that would be, that would probably be best, because of course, annexations that took place, and Vic can jump in and correct me, but I believe it's 1987. Actually,
86, but if you're talking about the Ibsen property.
no, I think if the annexation, no, I don't remember the year. But there was a break point where cities didn't have to provide service plans with their annexations, and basically if you wanted to come in, you came in with no guarantee of services and so. And I don't remember the exact year of that. I've got 87, I think, confused with the Colonia bill, but that's why it's important to find out when he was annexed. If it was annexed after that and the service plan was done, then the city does have an obligation to extend those services to him, but prior to that, him and his neighbors would have to cost share the extension of the line.
So we'd have to find out the year when they bought the properties.
So just some additional information. Galen, after we had the discussion last night, our council sent me a copy of deeds going all the way back to October of 1910 when the city was incorporated, along with this plat. I had a surveyor take a look at that, and I just got feedback today. He said his property is not part of that original element, and you probably haven't seen your email yet. I sent you an email earlier today to get that. I will be sitting with the surveyor on Thursday, and then we'll get together and figure out if it is, that's one thing. If it's not, then got to continue down that path. When did it get annexed in?
And I think that's kind of what our mapping person found out, was that it wasn't in that original meets and bounds of the city.
Yeah, so I'm going to suggest to look at that.
What was that?
He suggested to me that it was.
Yeah, and that's part of the process. I just went to get the surveyor, because after I read it the same perspective, I thought it was in. And I said, okay, let me go get an expert who actually has done the plot. I said, I'll see on Thursday.
Of course. Of course.
Okay. Councilman Williams?
Yes, item 8 is discuss the need to conduct extensive research might be a little heavy there, but regarding types and numbers of animal violations and citations issued per ward. And, fellow councilman, we have before you 3 items, and I think I made an extra copy for Jessica as well, she's got it. One is, again, the nice, lovely map of the wards for the city. The other is a report, the ACO report for February, which I think we got by email, at least I got this copy by email. And the ACO report sort of provides some good information regarding animal pickups, strays out there, the numbers that have been returned, those that have been adopted, and so forth. It gives you a sort of a overall picture of what's going on, but I feel that maybe we could get more information. By example, on the draft item number 2, the second copy, which if we could, the same items to be addressed, but to try to assess, yes, the total number, but how many are coming from each of the wards. I think that would be useful information in planning strategy and doing some things in the future for our residents and then their pets in the future. That's it.
Okay. So,
I think it's reasonable.
Yeah.
so what do you think we can get that breakdown?
Seems like that would be a lot of, just extra work for the animal control officers. I think you could probably get them to give you the address or where they picked them up. I don't know, that's the only thing. Seems like that's a lot of extra for them to go through.
The only thing I think of is if they chase it out.
And from
Put
Ward
it
3
in
to
Ward 1.
Ward 2.
Where did it go?
Mark the dogs in Ward 2 and they find him in Ward 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also, you know, since we're talking, can I bring up what we've been talking about in animal control with the animal advisory board? We've been working on Jennifer and Patsy have been working on this matrix of different from different towns in Texas, and the way that they've been able to change some laws regarding animals in their towns, and they've come up with some really good ideas that we've been working with, and I will see if I can get you to email everybody what we've been working on. It's just kind of an outline what we've been working on, and I think it's going to work really well because they've got a really good system set up, or that we're working on, like they've got a number system of how dangerous the animal is, how dangerous the attack was, you know, and how, if it was an attack on a person or an attack on an animal, or if it was provoked or non-provoked. And so they've got this really good number system. So it'll be easier for, I think, the animal control officers also to be able to check off and then have a number to work with instead of saying, it seemed like it was like this, and so this was my best guess. And so we're working on some stuff, and I know Jennifer does pretty good keeping records too.
Mayor, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
Nick did send over some drafts from ordinances from other cities that I think at the next animal advisory board, we can share those and see what language we want to pull from that and add to ours.
Yeah, that's what we've been working on, and are just going over some of the stuff that they've put together, and it's pretty good stuff, I think.
I think we still need to study as far as what Councilman Weaver said, break down by wards where we need to concentrate on. And not that all the other wards are not important, but, you know, we need to kind of get
There's
an
a
idea.
specific area. And that ACO report that I emailed you, it's actually attached to the report when the police chief brings it, when he presents. The animal control report is back there, but he generally doesn't cover that, just covers his stuff. I think Nick wanted to add something.
Yes, sir.
Well, I couldn't hear all the comments tonight, but we do have some issues with definitions of our animal ordinance, and we are prepared to work on that. If you have any particular questions about some of the problems we have with the ordinance, I can help you with that.
All right, sir. Any questions, sir? Okay. All right, thanks, sir. Now we're going to move on to the action items to be accompanied by a brief statement of facts, including where funds are coming from. If applicable, action items limited up to 10 per meeting. Citizens are allowed to comment, limited to 3 minutes, after being called upon by the mayor. Citizens are required to state their names and the ward in which they reside. Priorities will be given to citizens of Alpine and those who own business or property in the city. Individuals who do not live in or own business or property in the city of Alpine will be allowed to speak at this time available. Councilman Stevens.
So, Mr. Mayor, the first one is discuss, consider, take action to adopt the ordinance 2019-04-01, an ordinance of the City of Alpine, amended Chapter 18 Building and Building Regulations of the Code of Ordinance, City of Alpine, Texas, by adding in a new Article 10, contractor registration, to provide for the registration of the contractors and setting fees for the registration of contractors, providing that this ordinance shall be cumulative, providing a severability clause, providing a penalty clause, providing for publication in the official newspaper, providing an effective date. Given the discussion and the input that I've gotten, including tonight, I'm going to propose we table that. And because there's been lots of feedback from lots of contractors, in addition to here this evening, that I've received many inputs, that while they understand the need from a registration standpoint, there's pushback relative to fees, which I agree with is an issue. We have not yet set the fee structure for permits. So I propose we table this until such time as we sort out the overall fee schedule, because I know the proposal is, and we're going to have lots of discussion with contractors, based upon what we've seen thus far, there's a proposal that the cost for permits in some cases would go up. And I I don't think it's fair to ask contractors to pay more for that and pay more for this. So I propose we table action item number 1.
Okay. Motion been made and second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, like sign, motion carries. Thank you. Councilman Stevens.
Yes, sir. Item number 2 is discuss and consider take action, excuse me, to approve a policy through resolution 2019-04-2 that the city of Alpine will utilize budget or average billing for gas and water services for those residents who wish to utilize balance or average billing, budgeting, and direct the city manager implement the policy within 30 days. You see a draft resolution in front of you, and I propose that we adopt the resolution as written with with 2 exceptions. In the third line between the words gas and water services 2, in between the sign we place the word start, okay, because the intent was to start, give people the ability to start signing up for that within a week. And the same in the bottom paragraph, the same, add the word start in front of sign, which is near the end of that third sentence. So that's the motion.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion made and second. Any discussion now? Yes, sir.
So I think, the discussion, I know this came up in last city council, the reason that this is worded as it is I've gotten quite a bit of feedback, continue to get feedback from citizens that this was put in place, both gas and water were stopped by direction of the city manager. And I want to make sure that we get that put back in as a tool, and we've got to have the mechanism, because we didn't hear about it the first time, it just stopped. So that's the basis for the resolution.
Mayor, if I may? If I may.
Is there a second? Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to see, Mick had referred to the fact that he found maybe an originating ordinance for this. Is there an ordinance? Were you able to locate the ordinance, Mick?
We found it in an old resolution from 2002, but we haven't been able to find all the wording of that resolution, but that's when it was apparently established, was in 2002.
So will you be drafting an ordinance to go into our current ordinances?
Yeah, we really wanted to see that original resolution to see what the setup was, but we're working on an ordinance and it should be ready by the next meeting.
Okay.
Because on that one, I had an email from Megan to Jessica, and it says October is the month we usually do budget building for water. Gas is done in March. As part of the discussion Friday, we kind of agreed to no longer continue budget billing. If we agree, we would like to send out letters this month to those on budget billing indicating the city is no longer providing budget billing.
Yeah, that letter was sent out.
It was
We
sent out,
stopped it.
but we stopped.
For both gas and water, council was never brought into that discussion. I want to put it back in.
Okay.
That's the basis for the resolution, is to get it put back in.
Put back in there, okay. During the discussion? None?
So until we actually have the ordinance, there's nothing to implement, because there's no.
No, there is something to implement. That's why the resolution is written as it is. It is for the city to allow people to start signing up for that, so we know who is interested in moving forward, and that we would have the implementation occur not later than 31 May, which gives plenty of time to get an ordinance in place for the city council to approve, which makes it legal.
Got to work? All those in favor? Raise your right hand. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, sir. Okay. Councilman Stevens, you're on again.
So the next item on here was to discuss, consider, and take action on the second and final reading of the ordinance 2019-03-01, the City of Alpine, Texas, amending Chapter 94, Traffic and Vehicles of the Code of Ordinances, City of Alpine, Texas, to require a fee for requested police escort services, providing that this ordinance should be cumulative, providing severability clause, providing for savings clause, providing penalty clause, providing for publication of official newspaper, providing an effective date. As a reminder, we went forward with this, and I initiated it based upon the feedback from the police department, given their escorting all the solitaire trailers through, and their whole intent was to be able to get solitaire, to be able to give them a call, so they could get an off-duty police officer available to put that in place. And I still believe that's the right thing to do for solitaire. However, there are other clearly large vehicles that go through. I think we need to table this as well to better understand the implication for those who do business here locally, and then come back with a potential amendment for that. So I propose we table this in favor of gathering more information before we take action.
Mayor, before you take a second, I just want to point out that this ordinance specifically is only for those vehicles and loads that require a manufactured housing single trip permit from the Texas Department of Motor Vehicles. It does not impact any other industry except for mobile homes.
Just for solitaire. I think we need to reword that in here so it's perfectly clear.
Well, it says in it.
Okay.
It says it in there. I'd still like to hold it right now until we go get it worked and make sure we get all the items covered.
Okay. Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of tabling the motion, raise your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. We're gonna table it. And city manager.
This is discuss, consider, and take action to accept the fiscal year 2017-2018 audit presented by Gibson Ruddick Patterson LLC. And with us tonight is Marlene Enkert.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I would like to thank you all for moving that executive session back.
Yeah, right back, don't you?
We've passed out some graphs I'd like to go over with you that I think really boil the financial statements down into a nutshell. The first one is a comparison of the governmental revenue over the last 5 years. You can see there's been some steady increase. Now this year is very similar to the previous year. A little bit of fluctuation. The blue there on the bottom is property taxes, and you can see a little bit of an increase there, and that relates to value increases, okay? The gold section there in the middle is basically all the other taxes. You can see between 16 and 17, there was a significant jump, and that related to the hotel tax. We had about a $130,000 increase that year. This year it's a little bit less. The hotel taxes went down about 25, and there were some other fluctuations as well. The gray stripe there is we refer to as intergovernmental. It's basically grant revenue, and that's just going to fluctuate based on whatever grants you have going on. The green is the admin and franchise tax, so that's basically what we're charging to the proprietary funds, okay, that's coming in because we do all the work for them here, the bookkeeping. Then the red section there is just everything else, the other revenue, and that stays fairly constant. So no surprises there. On the next page is just a comparison of the general fund expenditures. So this is just the general fund. The blue section on the bottom is just our general expenditures, and this is coming from Exhibit C3 out of the big bound document, which is page 27. But so the general government, just almost the same as prior year, went down just a little bit. The gold section is public works, and you can see in 17 there was a very large increase in then we went back down to where we had been. Well, that relates to the street projects that had been in the prior year. The red section is health and welfare, and that is almost identical to the previous years. The gray is the culture and recreation, and you can see a little bit of an increase there, and that's almost all in payroll expenditures. And then the green is public safety, and that's almost identical to the prior year as well.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
Health and welfare, does that include what we pay for health care for our employees, or that's something different? I'm trying to understand the definition.
No, that's a benefit, and so your health insurance goes along with wherever the payroll cost goes.
So what's included in health and welfare?
Well, let me introduce you to Marlene, and she will tell you exactly what's in. In fact, I would like y'all to be the first to hear this. This is the newest partner in our firm.
Cool, congratulations.
On the health and welfare, I would need, I do not have it with me, the trial balance, because we convert everything that has to do with health and welfare. I'm trying to think of some of the functions, the departments. We take your departments and categorize them in here. I can get you that.
Okay,
I do not know it off the top of my head.
I can, if it's defined in here, I'll look at it.
And it's going to be services to the public.
That's okay.
Okay.
You know what, the animal, just give me a second, animal control is in there.
Okay.
Anything to do with the animal control.
I think the dispatch is that too, isn't it?
What's it got?
Part of the police department's in
The
there.
dispatch, communications.
No,
Public
that's
safety.
public safety. Public safety includes your police, culture and recreation includes the parks and
Yep.
all that. Public works is your streets. So the health and welfare, I think, is,
That our ambulance contract?
the
Animal control.
animal control and maybe,
The ambulance contract?
Could be the ambulance.
yes, maybe the ambulance. But we can get you that for sure.
But most of the animal control is probably because we got more employees there.
Right.
Right.
The next graph is a comparison of the general fund equity. So this is the fund balance in the general fund. And the blue represents the unassigned, and the red is basically the committed, which is specifically set aside for certain purposes. As you can see, there has been significant improvement in that blue category over the last 5 years. It started out $1 million underwater, and now we're sitting at 923,000. So we are very pleased. Across the bottom of that, in the kind of gold or orange colored, I did a calculation of the number of days of expenditures that we have in the unassigned. The GFOA, that's the Government Financial Officers Association, that's a national organization that sets most of the rules that we follow in accounting for government entities. They have the recommendation that a general government, like a city or county, maintain a minimum of 60 to 90 days of expenditures. And what this is, if there is a fluctuation in our revenue for whatever reason, that we can continue operations for 60 to 90 days. And this is also an issue that rating agencies look at whenever you're going to sell bonds and so forth. and like to see a nice, constant level of equity. If you were a corporation, you would refer to this as retained earnings, okay? And so just like if you were an investor, you would want to invest in companies that maintain a reasonable level in their retained earnings. So you are currently at a sweet spot, 88 days. This is a